listening to I Am Refocused Radio with your host, Shamaya Reed. This show is designed to inspire you to live your purpose and regain your focus. And now, here's your host, Shamaya Reed.
Hey, welcome to I Am Refocused Radio. We are here once again. And man, today, just like any other time, we have a special guest. We have the one and only Dave Albin. He is going to tell us all about Firewalk. What is Firewalk? Well, we're going to learn everything. Well, guess what? It's a website, firewalkadventures.com. We'll dive into that a little bit. But first and foremost, Dave has a very impressive bio. I'm not just blowing smoke. I mean, this guy has some stories that he can tell on this show. And I don't even want to give a big introduction. I just want to give you the floor and say, how you doing, man?
Hey, bro. Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah,
it's an honor. Are you kidding?
I had to put a comment on that and just get to the point because when I saw some of the things you've done, you working with Tony Robbins of the world and did that for almost 20 plus years. And man, you work with Google and NASA. Like, okay, we got to pump the brakes and get the story from Dave himself. Tell us a little bit about your journey.
Thanks, bro. Well, it has been that. It has definitely been a journey and one that's been full of blessings beyond my wildest dreams. And it didn't start out that way. Really what happened a couple of months before I was born, my biological father, we don't know exactly what happened, but all we know is that he hurt his head. And to save his life, they put a plate in his head. Well, that came with a lot of pain. And he was in excruciating pain all the time. And 2 months before I was born, he turned to my mom and said, I'm going to the grocery store. And we never saw or heard from him again. So when I was born to a single mom. She already had 2 boys. We were living in Hollywood, California. We had a 1-bedroom apartment, and there were 6 of us living in this 1-bedroom apartment. Mom was working up the street at the Roosevelt Hotel as a server, and she worked her butt off. She came from that generation, which I think is one of the most incredible generations of our entire planet's history, right? Because this is the generation that went through the Great Depression. This is the generation that had to go through World War II. And my mom and her other 8 siblings, that's what they did. They went through that. And so they knew how to get things done. They knew how to grow food. They knew how to sew clothes. Every day you had to get up and everybody worked together for survival. So my mom knew hard work. And she did. She worked her butt off as a server at the Roosevelt Hotel. But, it wasn't enough. She had 6 mouths to feed. And so when I was 5 years old, she went to her oldest sister, Pat, and she said, Pat, I can't feed David. I can't feed all of them. Will you help? Will you adopt David? And so my aunt and uncle, by the family term, adopted me at the age of 5 years old. Now, I'm young enough where I don't really remember much of that, bits and pieces, if you will. And so all I know is I moved from Hollywood to Long Beach, California. Now I'm living with, who I think's my mom and dad. Well, now if we fast forward that to 6 years later, I'm 11 years old. On the first day of summer vacation, 1964, it's summer vacation. You know what it's like to be an 11-year-old. You're all excited. You're starting to think about what you're going to do for the summer and hang out and go to the beach. And, I'm in Southern California, man. I'm in Long Beach. What a beautiful place to grow up, man. It was awesome. And so mom comes in and gets me and she says, hey, David, come to the kitchen. Your father and I need to speak to you. And they brought me in, they set me down, and my mom put her hand on my wrist and she's got tears in her eyes. And she says, David, we need to tell you something. And she went on to say, what we need to tell you is we're not your parents. What? What do you mean you're not my parents? What does that mean? At 11 years old, you can't get your mind around. You're not going to, right? It's like taking you outside and look at the sky and it's blue. And you go, the sky's not blue. Yeah. Well, it looks pretty blue to me. And so that's how it started. And she went on to say, that my Aunt Dean, was actually my biological mother. And I remember I don't even like her, man. And what I mean by that is, in a very loving way, is that every time she was around me, she wanted to be around me, right? She wanted to hold me and get close to me and kiss me and hug me. Well, yeah, of course. I was her son, and she only got to see me every once in a while. So no wonder she wanted to love on me. And so that just went along for a while. Well, shortly after they told me this, again, 1964, summer of 64, they both started drinking. Both Bob and Pat Albin started drinking. And that's when things turned, and it took a hard right turn. Pat she was kind of a friendly drunk. She was never mean, if you will, but she would pass out and stuff like that, right? And then Bob, he was not. He was not a nice guy. He was a wonderful guy when he was sober. He was not a nice guy when he was drinking. And so they literally went to the store one day, and when they left, I went over to the cabinet. I knew where they were hiding the booze. And back in those days, by the way, you could leave your kids alone. It was no big deal in the 50s and 60s. Are you kidding? And so I went over, and they were hiding it in plain sight. And I went over and I got it, picked it up. It was in the cabinet. I set it on the table, and I poured about a coffee cup, about half full of that brandy, and I downed it. And man, you know what, bro? I never had a chance. I was an alcoholic right on the spot, literally. It was running in my family anyway. There's a lot of alcoholism, and I was no exception. I was definitely right in the middle of it. Well, when you start doing that at 11 years old, things start coming around. You start hanging around the wrong people, doing the wrong things. You become a thief. You become a liar. You become a cheat. I mean, that's just how alcoholism and drug addicts and drug addiction works. Because, right after I, started drinking, drugs wasn't very far behind. And by the time I was a junior in high school, literally, they brought me in one day to the principal's office and said, Dave Albin, you are out of our school. We cannot deal with you any longer. You're a threat to the school. And so out I went. Well, the good news was my mom did teach me a couple things growing up. She taught me a lot, actually. But the one thing she did, she grew beautiful flowers in the backyard. And what she would do, she cut them for me, and she would arrange them, and then she put a rubber band around them. And she was really interesting because she cut the flower at an angle instead of at the bottom. And then when she put them in a bucket, she had a beautiful eye for color. She would all arrange them, and then she'd put the water in the bucket and send me out on the street corner to sell them. Well, she also put a little bit of 7-Up in the water. And I have no idea what happens. All I know is that my flowers would outlast the florist 2-1. They last for 2 weeks. So there I am selling flowers on the street corner. I'm an entrepreneur. Shortly after that, I got a paper route. That's where you're delivering paper 7 days a week. And you better believe me, that's a full-time business for a kid. You definitely have to have an entrepreneurial spirit to last there. And then if that wasn't enough, I lived across the street from a golf course. And guess what I learned? Golfers suck.
Yeah.
Man, right? They're horrible, man. 90% of the golfers in America, at least at that time, shot over 100. And so they were hitting the balls over the fence. Well, guess what I did? I'd go take my Stingray bicycle and I'd ride the perimeter, and I guess what I'd find? Lots of golf balls. I'd take them back home. I'd clean them up. I went back to the golf course and went into the trash cans and took the boxes that they came in, and I'd take them home, and I'd just put the golf balls in those boxes, and I'd line them up, right? I'd Titleist, Maxfly, Dunlap, Wilson's. Then I'd go back to the parking lot, and guess what I would do? Obviously, I'd sell those golf balls back to the golfers. So, when I got kicked out of high school, I didn't care, because you know what? My belief was at a young age, there's money out there. Go get it. You can find it. Literally, I was finding golf balls laying around, right? Flowers growing in the backyard. So, that influences you when you're 11, 12 years old. That's for sure. So literally, when I got kicked out of high school, I went to the biggest grocery store in the state of California, and I got a job. And I became a retail clerk. They were a division of the Teamsters Union. And after a year apprenticeship, I started making a little over $8 an hour. Now, this is in 1972, right? $8 an hour is like $50 an hour now. Yeah. I went out and bought a Mach 1 Mustang. I got my own apartment down in Belmont Shore, California. Really cool one-bedroom apartment in the shore. And the other thing, I'm making good money because I needed money because I was a drug addict. I was doing a lot of speed, because I was working night shifts. So I used speed to keep myself up because I didn't want to sleep during the day. And then, and it just got worse, right? I got into hard drugs, and then from there, it literally, I'll just move this forward. By the time I got to June 1988, I was in my third marriage. I married a woman who was a bartender, and literally, I woke up that morning on June 8, 1988. I'm living in the basement. They're living upstairs. And I'm like, this is it. I'm done. It's over. This pain, this emotional and physical pain that I'm in, that's excruciating, it's going to stop today. And so I thought my only out in that moment was put a bullet in your head. Well, that's pretty sucky because, then it dawned on me after thinking about it for a minute. I like, you know what? When you pull that trigger, yeah, maybe you think your troubles are over, but those 3 kids upstairs that you adopted, if you will, as their stepfather, you're going to ruin their life. You can't do that. You're going to destroy everybody around you. And so it was like I was having this conversation with myself, and it was finally, it's like, come up with another way, pal. You got to figure out something else. And so the next thought I had was call Alcoholics Anonymous. Well, I'm like, okay, well, what's that about? You know what's interesting about that? I didn't know who AA was. I had no idea. I'd never known anybody in AA. I never went to an AA meeting. Yet there it was. There was the thought in my head. So I did. And I called. I got this wonderful lady on the phone. To this day, I nicknamed her Madge. She saved my life, literally, because she was the gatekeeper, man. And the reason I nicknamed her Madge is because she talked like this. she probably smoked 2 packs of Pall Mall non-filters a day, right? But she was the gatekeeper. And she's the one that would make a decision. If you told her and said the right things to her, she would call somebody to come pick you up. And so we did that. And that was it. I got to AA. I took to it like a duck to water. I loved it. It was an incredible program, still is. Once I got a month of sobriety, they gave me a chip, and I'm holding it up right here. I'm tapping it on the board here, and it said 1 month. Then I got one for 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, and 1 year. This last year, June 8, 2023, we picked up a chip for 35 years. And when I say we, I mean we. It wasn't me. It was a whole bunch of people that helped me achieve sobriety. And so what happened with that, right now I'm getting sober. Well, I'm coming off cocaine, heroin, alcohol. This is not easy. This is rough. It was miserable. It was really, really, really hard for 2 years. And at the same time, I have insomnia, right? So my sleep patterns are all over the place, and I'm up late at night all the time. Well, there I am. One night, 1988, there he is, Mr. Enthusiasm, right? Selling his program, a young, enthusiastic Tony Robbins selling Personal Power, a 30-day program for total success through Guthrie Ranker Corporation. Well, I didn't like Tony when I first heard him. I'm like, well, he's a pompous ass, man. I don't like this guy. He's all motivated and stuff, and I'm not, man. I'm hurting bad.
Yeah.
But he said two things that got me. The first thing he said was, we'll do more to avoid pain than we will to gain pleasure. And I remember thinking, okay, well, that makes sense to me because that's what I'm using drugs and alcohol for. I'm either trying to run from pain or at least trying to chase some pleasure. And then here's what got me. He said, the driving force in our life, the way we make decisions, we are inspired by inspiration or desperation. That's how we do it. And I'm like, well, man, I'm pretty desperate. Maybe I should listen to this guy. So I bought his program. This is in 1988. They sent it to me. It came in a big box, and it came on these little white things called cassette tapes, man. Mm-hmm. That's how old it was, right? I mean, some of your listeners not even going to know what cassette tapes are. If you go to the Smithsonian, they're there. They're right next to 8-track tapes and reel-to-reel.
That was their way of podcasting.
That's right. Absolutely. That was their way of podcasting, right? So anyway, man, I plugged them in and I listened to all the tapes and I did what the man taught me to do, and it worked. Well, 7 years later, Tony comes to my town and I found out about it. And so I decided to go. Well, I also found out in the process that they were going to be doing a firewalk. And I'm like, well, I'm not doing no firewalk. That ain't going to happen. But I'm going to go see Tony. I'm sure you don't have to do the firewalk. That's for the crazy people. I'll go hide out in the back. No one's going to know. No big deal. So, and again, because I wanted to see Tony. I'd read his book, went through his program. I was sold on his technology and his motivational tactics, right? So my buddy went with me and we got there and Tony took the stage at 2:00 in the afternoon. Well, the next thing I know, it's after midnight. I've been in a room for 10 hours with Tony Robbins. And all of a sudden Tony goes, take your shoes off. And I'm thinking, oh no, I don't think so, pal. You're not tricking me. I see where you're going with this. I'm not going to do that. Well, now I got a problem. I'm in a room with 3,500 people. And guess what they're doing? They're taking off their shoes. And I'm thinking, oh, great. Now what am I going to do, right? Because I'm not going to do this firewalk thing. And I'm like, well, just chill, just relax. Go ahead. Look, take your shoes off. When you get out there, just go hide in the back. No one is going to know. They're not checking on you, right? Or at least so I thought. And so, and when Tony gets everybody going out there, he gets everybody to start clapping and chanting, right? So everybody's going, yes, yes. 3,500 people chanting yes and clapping, right, as you go out there. Well, heck, it gets worse. Because when you really physically get outside, he's got African drummers. So now it's, the beats in the rhythm, it's dun, 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 dun. And people are clapping and they're screaming and yelling. And man, what a dog and pony show. And when you get out there, he's got a giant, how do you firewalk 3,500 people? Well, they build a giant fire in the middle of the day. It's like 35 feet. The pit is like 35 feet wide, maybe 70, 75 feet long. And so what they do is they just stack wood on it, hardwood, cords and cords and cords of wood, and it burns all day. And eventually it just renders. And then they just take the coals and they load it into a wheelbarrow. They take a wheelbarrow and they build 2 lanes of sod, of grass, what's called a fire lane, on each side of the wheelbarrow. And then what they do, they just take a flathead shovel and they take the coals from that wheelbarrow and they sprinkle them on that fire lane, and that's what you walk on. Well, I'm hiding in the back, right? Because I'm having none of this. Well, Tony Robbins knows that the Firewalk is literally one of the most life-changing experiences on the planet. Now, a lot of people don't know this, but this is a 1,000-year-old experience. It's been around, the other areas of the world for years and years and years. People don't really know about it in the West unless you're Native American Indians, because they did a lot of firewalking. But if you're in India or maybe the Philippines, or maybe Fiji, or the Polynesians, or the Hawaiians, or the people of Portugal and Spain and the Indo-Europeans, all of these cultures have been using a firewalk for a lot of reasons. When there's a marriage, when there's a child is born, rite of passage. That's the biggest part. They use it for rite of passage. So he knows it's powerful. That's why he brought it into his events. He also knows there's people like me, and he knows we're hiding out. So what's he do? He trains people to come find you. So I'm sitting back there thinking I got it all figured out. And here comes this guy out of nowhere. And he finds me. And he makes eye contact when he literally walks right up to me. He goes, man, hey, are you okay? Because I had probably a bizarre look on my face. And I'm like, yeah, I'm fine, right? You lie. I'm not fine, but I'm going to lie about it. Yeah, I'm fine. He said, well, hey, man, you going to walk tonight? And I'm like, absolutely not. I don't want anything to do with it. He goes, no problem, man. We don't want you to do anything you don't want to do. He goes, but let me ask you a question. Okay, what? He goes, wouldn't you at least like to watch? And I thought, well, yeah, sure, I'll do that. I'll go watch. Let's go watch these people burn their feet off, and it should be fun, right? And so he goes, look, man, you can't see anything from way back here. You're 100 yards from where it's happening. I can hear it, right? The drums are going. They're clapping. They're chanting. People are already firewalking. They are on the celebration side, and they're screaming with celebration. I mean, it's intense. Then you got the big fire going on over here. I mean, bro, it is a dog and pony show like you wouldn't imagine. So I'm like, okay, I'll get in line. Well, I get in line. I'm kind of walking along. And the next thing I know, this guy comes up to me and he goes, he knows when you're ready. When he says go, you go. And then pew, this guy just disappeared into the night. And I was like, what was that? What was that about? What do you mean he knows when you're ready? So I'm walking along, and I'm not really paying attention to where I am. And the next thing I know, guess where I am? Boom. I'm at the front of the line. And I'm losing it. I am looking down and I can see this lane, this fire lane is like 3 feet wide. It's 18 feet long. And the coals are on top are bright red. They're glowing. It's not a question if they're real or not, right? Plus the wheelbarrow's right there. You can feel the heat coming off. My heart's jumping out of my chest. Well, there's a trainer standing there because I'm staring into the abyss. And he goes, eyes up. And he startled me, right? So I bring my eyes up and he goes, squeeze your fist and say yes. And I went, yes. And he went, stronger. And I went, yes. And now he screams at me. And now it's fight or flight, right? He screams at me at the top of his lungs. I threw my hands in the air and I said, yes. And he goes, go, go, go. Pew. I took off, right? Remember the guy back there? He knows when you're ready. When he says go, you go. I did. I took off. Well, here's the first thing I learned about firewalking. When you take the first step, I'll guarantee you're going to take the second, third, fourth, and fifth. You're not going to stop. Well, what happens is Tony stages a couple of people at the end of the fire lane and they interchange hands and they catch you to stop you. And they're like, stop, wipe your feet and celebrate. And I'm wiping my feet and I'm celebrating. And all of a sudden I go, oh boy, it dawns on me, I burnt myself really bad. And all of a sudden I look at my foot and it's dirty, but there's no burns. Well, it's my other foot. No, it's dirty too, but there's no burns. And so now I just walked on coals that were 1,000 degrees and I didn't burn myself, and I don't have a clue how I did it. None. Now, I think we've all done something like that where you do something really awesome, but you don't really know how you did it, but you take credit for it, right? Because I'm like, well, that's right. That's this guy. I did it, and I'm celebrating, man. And I'm down there with a couple thousand people. We are jumping up and down. And I mean, in that moment when you firewalk, when you finish, it was literally one of the most exhilarating moments of my life. Because in that moment, I thought I could do anything. I could accomplish anything. In fact, I'm like, where's the bus? Let's go to Everest, right? Let's go climb that dude. But here's where it gets interesting. By the way, this is a 4-day event. That was day one, the night of. Now we're going into day two. And as we get into day two, that's when I saw the magic. Because when everybody came in that next morning, I was watching all these people get along. I've never seen or witnessed anything like it in my life. People were laughing and crying and hugging and connecting. I mean, I was like, whoa, did we drink the Kool-Aid last night? Yeah, we sure did. And to this day, I've never seen or witnessed anything like it. Immediately after the Firewalk, they leveled up, man. Their self-worth, their self-confidence, their self-belief all got raised the night before. So our frequency came up together collectively. And so you feel like you've known these people your entire life. It is magical, man. And so I got to know one of Tony's trainers, and he invited me. I found out they use a lot of volunteers, and I could fill out an application, which I did. And I got a letter in the mail after that event. Said, Dave Albin, congratulations. You got selected to crew with the Anthony Robbins Companies. And so, boom, man, my foot's in the door. And that all happened in 95, 96. In 97, I became a subcontractor for Tony. I had a security background and a military background. So I started helping take care of his celebrities. Now I could do a whole podcast just on that being on the security team. I also got put on the fire building team. I lived on a farm. I knew how to use tools. I knew how to use a hatchet. I knew how to split wood. I knew what kindling was. I knew how to use a log splitter. And so later, after crewing a few times, they offered me a job as a subcontractor. That all happened in like 96, 97. In 2003, Tony offered me the captain's position where I took over all of his firewalks globally. And that was it, man. In fact, he even invited my family, who I was homeschooling at the time. My wife and my 2 kids went on the road with Tony Robbins in 2003. 2005, we went to London. We set the world record. And I say world record, Guinness was not there. I want a full disclosure here. But it was the largest firewalk in our planet's history. We firewalked 12,300 people. Now we had many, and the only thing that's ever come close to that's another Tony Robbins seminar, right? Where we did 11,000 or 10,000 or 9,000, whatever. And that was it, man. Now I'm on the road with Tony Robbins, my family. And how do you explain that? So I go from this drug addict, alcoholic, mindset of a loser to working for one of the top personal development coaches on earth. And then in 2014, how I got to where I am now is I'm driving down the road. My phone rings and it's Google. And they're like, hey, are you the Dave Albin that does the firewalks for Tony Robbins? Yeah. Why? What can I do for you? They said, well, if you're not under any contractual obligation or non-compete, we'd like to talk to you about hiring you. I'm like, well, homeboy's a free agent, man. What you got? And bro, the next thing I know, I'm in Mountain View at Google. The following year, I'm at Google. And then right after that, that's when I realized there was an incredible marketplace in corporate America for life-changing paradigm shift team building experiences. Nobody was doing it anywhere like what I could do, because these experiences work, right? Because what doesn't challenge you doesn't change you. So corporate America has been eating me up ever since, because shortly after Google, I went to NASA. And I went to Notre Dame, Virginia Tech, Remax, Microsoft, Heineken, Chick-fil-A, YMCA, high schools. I mean, and it was all organic. And, no pun intended, but we've been going hot and heavy ever since.
Man, I mean, that's a story. I mean, that sounds like a movie. I mean, I'm just throughout the whole talk. I was like, I ain't gonna interrupt. I'm just gonna let this play out because it sounds like a movie. Because I can't help but to think about your situation.
Well, you can't write a movie like that. Hell, you can't write a screenplay, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, somebody would have thought it was made up, But you're right. Yeah, it is a movie, and so here's what's happened, right? So I got involved in podcasting a few months ago, about 8 months ago, I guess. And I was very reluctant to even start this whole podcasting thing. Well, I'm on this one show. And after the show, Natalia started interviewing me. She said, "Hey, man, have you ever done a Firewalk for veterans?" And I said, "No." And she said, I go, "Well, now lots of veterans have come to our events, but not specifically for veterans." She goes, "Man, you ought to think about it because that's a life-changing experience." And here's what we got. We know right now, well, the numbers out there floating around is 22 a day are committing suicide. But that's not accurate because that's only if they leave a note. It's closer to 40. And so it dawned on me. I'm like, whoa, maybe it's time to change directions because I know why they come back and kill themselves. I was there that night or that morning, when I was looking down that barrel of my pistol, when I wanted to end my life on June 8th because of my drug and alcohol addiction. You don't have any purpose. You're losing it. So you go over there and fight, right? In Afghanistan, you're over there keeping each other alive. And then you come home after being deployed for a year and you see some pretty nasty stuff and you come home and you get fragmented. Now you're not around the men and women that you were helping keeping each other alive and your purpose starts to drop. Depression starts to set in. And then what do? They reach for alcohol and then it gets bad real fast. The next thing you know, they take their own life. So my idea is that, and I came up with this shortly after we talked about it. I said, I'm going to create Operation Do No Harm. And it's going to be a Firewalk specifically for veterans, though we'll probably entertain some other areas too, like first responders and kids that have been bullied and maybe single moms. But our first task, though, is we're going to go into the veteran world. And we're going to bring them in. And by the way, we just scheduled our first one for April 13th in Modesto, California. We'll have some stuff up on my website about it soon. But we just got the commitment out of the people that are going to sponsor it, the Rotary out there in Modesto, California. And so what I'm going to do is bring them in and I'm going to make them take an oath. So I'm going to tell them, look, you're going to go out here and you're going to have an opportunity to participate in a 1,000-year-old rite of passage. However, you're going to have to raise your right hand and you're going to have to take an oath and a code. And you're going to have to promise to do no harm. Well, when military people take an oath, guess what? They live up to it. Now, here's the other thing we're going to do. I brought the board break into the Firewalk and I incorporated both. And the reason I did that is because it's a martial arts thing, right? Every dojo in America, if you go into martial arts, you know that if you go from one belt to another belt, typically what happens is that you break a board so that you can graduate, right? So I went, let's do that. So I brought the board break in, and here's what we do. They're going to write something on front of the board they want to move towards. They're going to write something on back of the board they're going to move away from. I'm going to have them write anybody's name on that board that they're in conflict with. So in other words, if forgiveness or reconciliation is part of that relationship, it ends tonight. Stop carrying that around. And then here's what it really gets good. And that is I have them write anybody's name on the board that they've lost. And that creates the ancestral part of it. And it creates the rite of passage. So we take them outside. We have board break stations. They break the board. And we walk them in a half circle counterclockwise for a very specific reason. And then we firewalk them. And after we firewalk them, they come back and they throw the board into the fire. And then, of course, we get that on video and we get photographs of that. Then there's one more piece. Well, there's a couple pieces, actually. But at that evening, when they're out there, I put them in what I call the heart hug. And what we do is we hug the opposite way that we normally do. So, when you go to hug somebody, you typically go towards their right? This way, you do it the opposite way. And then you hold each other, you close your eyes, and I have them take 3 cleansing breaths, deep diaphragmatic breaths. And when they come in or out of that breath, number 2, guess what happens? Their hearts calibrate. That means their hearts start beating at the same time. So I'll go do that, 6 times with the group. And the next thing you know, the entire group's hearts are beating at the same time. Now, during this process, we're going to give them a coin, just like they did in AA, right? Mm-hmm. And here's what I'm going to have them do. When they go back in, I'm going to say, take that coin, put it in your hand, and I want you to squeeze it as hard as you can. And I want you to feel as much pain from that, squeezing that, as you possibly can, because that's just a little example of the pain that your family and your friends are going to go through if you don't honor the code of conduct that you swore here today. That's the and I want you to be fully associated. Now, another thing I do is I take these little containers, and maybe you can hear this. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Little plastic container, and we put a sticker on it that said, Operation Do No Harm. I firewalked in 2024. And so they'll be able to take that home and set it on their counter or their desk or whatever, and they can see it every single day. And then one other thing we did, and I'll shut up. I went to the Zippo lighter company, and I said, hey guys, because I use their lighter when I light for my firewalks, right? And I always hashtag them. Hey Zippo, hey guys, thanks for the lighter. I'm going to light the fire, the fire for the firewalk. Well, I went to them and said, I told them what I was doing, and they said, oh, we're interested. And I said, well, would you guys make a lighter for these men and women? They said, absolutely. So what they're going to do is they're going to take a 1941 replica. Now, these are the lighters that they gave out to the GIs during World War II that they got to carry overseas. Wow. And one of the interesting things on the interview about that, when these GIs came back from World War II and they had their Zippo lighters, guess what they told the media? They loved it because they could reach in their pocket, take that lighter, and they could not only could they use it for a lighter, right? But it reminded them of something from home. It gave them something to inspire to come home to, right? So they're going to take that 1941 replica, they're going to powder coat them like black, and then they're going to take a laser and they're going to laser in Operation Do No Harm. And these lighters are going to be gorgeous. And so we're also going to give them that. And then we've got a complete plan for them after the fact, Facebook group and all kinds of different support. And so right now I've been out talking to some corporations who want to get involved. I reached out to the Black Rifle Coffee Company. I just spoke to MIT 45. It's a Kratom company out of Utah. Matter of fact, they're both in Utah. So right now we're going to go out here and summons any human being or company that wants to get their brand out in front of a major cause like this. And we're going to go out here and ask for every single bit of help that we can get.
Man, I mean, that right there, that does the whole deal, man. We've been talking to Dave Albin. You go to his website, firewalkadventures.com. And I like the quote I saw on your page. It said, stop looking for heroes and be one.
Yeah.
How important is that statement and its meaning for you?
Well, because I've been saying that for a while, but it slapped me in the face a couple of months ago. Because I'm doing work, I got companies coming in, they're hiring me. You know what I mean? They're launching a product, or maybe there's dissension, or things are good, things are bad, somewhere in the middle, whatever. And they're coming to me and they're hiring me. And they're writing me a check to come in and create this life-changing experience. Okay, that's really great. But I'm not a hero. I'm not acting like one. And so, I had to up my game. And so I have to live by my own creed. And I believed it when I say it, because I do believe that. Stop looking for heroes and be one. And so now I've got an opportunity to live that statement, in my own company. And here's the bottom line, man. We save one woman or one man from committing suicide out there with this cause. Then was it worth it? What happens if you save 100? What happens if you save 1,000? Are these people worth it? Come on, you think? So yeah, so it's my calling now, and that's the direction I'm going.
Man, I mean, shoot, I ain't gonna make this another 30-minute show, but you really could turn this into a reality TV show, because I think America will watch and they will probably go crazy on social media if you had a hashtag, whatever you want to call it, because it's unique, and the purpose behind it, I think, will win everybody over.
Well, let me plant one other seed here. And this came from an idea that they did back during Vietnam. So when I was in junior high school during Vietnam, any vet that got deployed into Southeast Asia, they made these little stainless steel bracelets. And you could buy a bracelet. I think it was like $17. They were like expensive back in 1965 or 66, right? And what you could do is you wore the bracelet, and it had the name of the vet. It had what their rank was. It had the date that they were deployed, I believe. And the thought was you wear that bracelet until you hear that they come home. So through some kind of network, back then you had to do it by mail. Of course, obviously now we'll get stuff here in real time. But that's something I'm thinking about, where people like, let's say one of your listeners goes, well, Dave, I don't have a big company, I'm making ends meet, but maybe I could afford $57 a month to support a vet. And that will help them, keep them alive and be part of the program. And you'll get their name and their information, right? So we'll be implementing something like that as well. But if you want to come for now, just come check out firewalkadventures.com and, go to our Facebook group or whatever and become a member and hang out with us and keep your eyes on us. And then, at some point in your life, you want to get involved, we'll bring you in.
Yeah, I think that's a brilliant idea. I have a very strong confidence that if you were to present that tomorrow to some board meeting, I'm sure it'd probably be A through Z companies who'd be like, sign us up. How can we sponsor someone and do something like this, especially for our veterans?
Yeah, and they have money. They do it all the time.
They need a good reason to give it. So
yeah, they do. It's like, okay, look at NASCAR. Okay, a lot of drivers, a lot of branding. Look at all the money that throws at racing. Just racing. Okay, great. It's entertainment. I get it. It's also a distraction.
Yeah.
So maybe take a little portion of that and come see us and let us really be part of it. Come to the Firewalks, be part of it. We'll put you on stage. You can talk. We're going to create a absolute spectacular environment for these men and women. And again, we're going to move towards first responders as well, and kids that have been bullied, and single moms. So, there's a little something in there for just about anybody that's listening.
Firewalkadventures.com. Go there right now. We've been talking to our guest today, Dave Albin. Once again, I want to say thank you for your time.
Thanks, bro.